This week on Vaticano, Pope Francis makes an apostolic voyage to Sweden to encourage the small community of Catholics there and to sign a joint document with Lutheran leaders in order to improve relations between the two confessions. We introduce you to Father Ibrahim from Aleppo, Syria, to show the life of Syrian Catholics through his eyes. And we shed some light on the papacy visiting the private apartments of the pontiffs in the summer residence of Castel Gandolfo. For this and more, Vaticano starts now. Pope Francis went to Sweden for his 17th international apostolic voyage on the eve of All Saints' Day. The Holy Father left Rome on Monday morning, October the 31st, and arrived in the southern Swedish city of Malmö at 11 o'clock a.m. Following an official welcoming ceremony, the Pope traveled to the city of Lund and paid a courtesy call to the Swedish royal family before leading an ecumenical prayer service with Lutheran leaders in Lund's cathedral. At the end of the ecumenical service, Pope Francis and Dr. Munib Yunan, the president of the Lutheran World Federation, signed a joint document pledging to improve relations between the two confessions through dialogue. The document also mentions welcoming refugees and caring for the planet. In the afternoon, the Holy Father took part in a second ecumenical event in the Malmö Arena with delegations from different Christian churches. In his speech, he said that we remember the commemoration of the 500th anniversary of the Reformation with a renewed spirit and in recognition that Christian unity is a priority, because we realize that much more unites us than separates us. The following morning, on Tuesday, November the 1st, the Holy Father celebrated the Mass of All Saints in Malmö for the small Swedish Catholic community. There's only one diocese in the whole country, with Catholics representing just 1% of the nation's population. The last pontiff to visit the country was St. John Paul II in 1989. Pope Francis encouraged the faithful and in his homily said that if there's one thing typical of the saints, it's that they are genuinely happy. The saints, he said, found the secret of authentic happiness, which lies deep within the soul and has its source in the love of God. Pope Francis arrived back in Rome at 3:30 p.m. local time. After the Angelus prayer on Sunday, October the 30th, Pope Francis expressed his nearness to everyone affected by an earthquake that hit central Italy again this last week.
Esprimo la mia vicinanza
I express my closeness to the victims of the earthquake in central Italy,
colpite dal terremoto. Anche questa mattina
Even this morning there was a strong shock. I pray for the injured and for the families that have suffered major damage, as well as for the personnel involved in rescue and assistance. May the risen Lord give them strength and Our Lady guard them.
e la Madonna li custodisca.
An earthquake hit the region of Amatrice around 7:40 a.m. local time, according to local agencies. The quake had a magnitude of 6.6, with the epicenter situated near the town of Norcia. Earlier this month, on October the 4th, Pope Francis visited the area of Amatrice to express his closeness to victims of the earthquake that hit the region in August, killing almost 300 people. A number of injuries have been reported from this most recent earthquake. Several buildings collapsed and others were seriously damaged, but so far there have been no deaths. Tremors were felt in Rome and all of central Italy. Even citizens of Venice in the north felt the earthquake. The Basilica of St. Benedict in Norcia was destroyed. According to tradition, the Basilica of St. Benedict was built over the birthplace of Saints Benedict and Scholastica, his sister. In Rome, two basilicas, St. Paul's outside the walls and St. Lawrence, both incurred minor damage.
On October 26 at the UN Geneva, this Human Rights Council open-ended working group discussed the creation of laws to hold international corporations responsible for human rights abuses in various areas such as public health, environment, sustainable development and labor rights. The world's first documented labor strike took place in Egypt in 12 BC. Western countries legalized striking in the early 20th century.
of course, workers can also go to national courts in the countries. And another mechanism that actually exists for the worker is actually that through a national trade union and an international trade union, the case can be brought before the ILO.
Currently, there is no mechanism at the international level which can hold corporations legally accountable. Experts demand also international laws to hold business executives responsible.
There ought to be civil liability of corporations, civil liability of investors, civil liability of speculators, because their actions do impact human rights and impact human rights often very negatively.
For Archbishop Jurkovic, moderator of this panel, it is not only about creating new laws.
We have to promote a new mentality which is so close to the position of the Holy See, which consider the common good as the first good and the only good. So it means which is good for everybody is good also for those who are, let's say, selling, producing and making money.
Pope Francis believes when the common good is used only in the service of profit and capital, the only thing gained is exclusion.
Sometimes you can blame international multinational organizations. Sometimes it is a much more complex problem. At the end, what I think it is interesting, and it is also coming out, it is as like a procedure of cultural change.
Aside from future laws, people already use their purchasing power to pressure international corporations to put people and planet ahead of profits.
And I think the Archbishop might actually like this statement because it actually comes from the Bible, the Henry James translation as it happens. Essentially, treat others the same way you want them to treat you.
In an interview in July, the chair of this UN working group confirmed that for the first time ever, there are signs of change at the UN.
You see that there is a will, there is an intention of saying, yes, we need profit, we need to do business, but we cannot do it at the expenses of the dignity of people and at the destruction of the environment. We cannot continue that way. I mean, we need different parameters, different values, different ethics to operate.
And I think we have to be courageous and participate in this process, and it is very much in the line of the orientations and the personal feeling of the Pope Francis. So I'm so pleased that they invited me and they could have moderated this session.
On Thursday, October the 26th, Pope Francis received members of the Santa Marta group during the third conference against human trafficking in Rome.
What
is needed is a concerted, active, and consistent effort both to eliminate the causes of this complex phenomenon and to encounter, assist, and accompany those who fall into the snares of trafficking. Unfortunately, the number of these victims, according to international organizations, is growing year by year. They are the most defenseless, who are robbed of their dignity, their physical and psychological integrity, and even their life.
Santa Marta Group.
The initiative was launched in 2014 following similar initiatives from the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales. Police chiefs, religious sisters, bishops, and representatives of civil society make up the Santa Marta Group. During the conference on the 26th and 27th of October in the Vatican, they shared and encouraged best practices to fight human trafficking. Among participants were also victims of this global crime. Cardinal Vincent Nichols of Westminster, England, said during the conference that while human trafficking is still not a top priority in many parts of the world, much has been done to finally expose this great evil.
This meeting carried forward the work of 3 previous meetings to a new level, because this problem of migration and the fact that human trafficking takes place within it is an exploding problem in the world. And therefore the numbers of people who are subjected to trafficking and slavery is going up. Now we are committed, along with the United Nations, to eradicate human trafficking and modern-day slavery in 15 years. So our concentrated effort was to build partnerships between the resources of police and the resources of the Catholic Church, in our case, at a local level, and this is a point of exchange and encouragement. And we saw the Holy Father, who is always hugely encouraging.
Princess Inyang was a victim of trafficking. In 1999, traffickers brought her from Nigeria, promising to give her a good job in Europe as a cook. But when she arrived in Italy, she was forced into prostitution. After she escaped from the traffickers, she came up with the idea of helping other victims of prostitution. With the help of her friends and the Caritas of the city of Asti, Italy, the project Piam Onless was born. The project assists victims, giving them shelter and providing them with an education and vocational training.
But now, trafficking is changing. It's not like 1999 and 2000s. So now the girls arrive from Libya, and most of them were victims in Libya. They have paid their madam. Some of them, they sold them again to Italy. So my job now is that with Commission of the Territories, I work in order to identify the victims of trafficking among the refugees.
Archbishop Paulino Luduku from South Sudan spoke about the conflict in his country and the dramatic phenomenon of child soldiers involved in it.
The only solution we have been saying is stop fighting, stop war, so that we fight in dialogue. Because there are reasons why these child soldiers, these people are fighting, they are going to bush. The only solution is to stop fighting and talk peace. This is where we are working on together.
Since 2014, the Santa Marta Group has held conferences in Spain, Ireland, and England. It has also held meetings in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. This year, the conference in Rome was concluded with a decision to call every bishops' conference of the world to be engaged with law enforcement officials of their countries to contribute to the fight against human trafficking. Nearly 21 million people, including minors, are believed to be victims of human trafficking, according to the International Labor Organization. Human trafficking generates annual profits as high as $32 billion. It's the second largest illegal industry after arms trafficking. Pope Francis reflected on this global crime during his Mass at the St. Marta Guest House in the Vatican, a few hours before the meeting with the Santa Marta Group.
Gli adoratori.
Even nowadays, in front of the calamities, the wars waged in order to worship the god of money, the many innocent people killed by the bombs launched by those who worship the idol of money, God still weeps, and he also says, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, my children, what are you doing?" And he also says this to the poor victims, to the arms traffickers, and to all those who sell the life of people. We'd do well to think both about how God our Father became man in order to be able to weep, and how God our Father weeps nowadays. He weeps over humanity that ends up not understanding the peace that he offers us, the peace of love.
E ci farà bene pensare.
In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. More on Vaticano begins now.
It is a city of death. It is not a city of life. Imagine to live in a situation without electricity, many times without water, with the high price of the elementary things, and in the same case without a work. Imagine to live under the bombardment every day. Many missiles are falling every day on the houses, on the hospitals and the schools, on the churches and on the mosques. So it is an impossible situation. We don't have the condition of life for the people there.
Aleppo is the second largest city in Syria. Currently, half of the city is occupied by armed militias and various jihadist groups who support the Islamic State. Father Ibrahim al-Sabah is a Catholic priest of the Latin Rite. He was born in Damascus, where he joined the Order of the Friars Minor, Franciscans. Since 2014, he's been serving the needs of his parishioners in Aleppo. He says that being a priest, he also has to work as a fireman, a doctor, and a caregiver.
From the 13th century that Franciscans are living in Syria and are helping in all the areas. We had a beautiful and long job work mission through the schools. We are the parishioner priests there. We are the parish priests in all the Syria for the Latin Church. And I am the parish priest of St. Francis of Assisi in Aleppo, the parish priest of all the Latin community there. So what we are doing, surely we don't stop on doing homilies and discourses today. We are working in the humanitarian help in this field, and we have till now 23rd of projects to help all the populations, not only the Christian ones. And we are trying to increase always our projects that we have in this humanitarian field.
The parish of St. Francis of Assisi is located only a few meters away from militants who launch rockets and gas cylinders, also on the church building. Despite the danger, the community helps thousands of families each month, providing first aid, medicine, and food.
First of all, we need the prayer of everyone, of every Christian in all the world. And second, as much as the Holy Spirit can inspire everyone in his heart, according to all the possibilities and all the talents, we are in need of a real help. We are always in contact with the poorest of the poor there, not only in Aleppo, in all the region, especially in Aleppo, and we need the material help so we can continue the mission there in Aleppo.
On the 25th of October, the Universal Church celebrates the Feast of Our Lady, Queen of Palestine. It's an important devotion for Catholics across the Middle East. The name Queen of Palestine applies to all the geographical region of the earthly homeland of Jesus. In Rome, a solemn celebration was held with the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre and all those who feel a deep connection to the Holy Land. Archbishop Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the Apostolic Administrator of the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, celebrated Mass at the Church of Santo Spirito for the occasion.
My jurisdiction included Jordan, Holy Land, Israel and Palestine, and Cyprus. We are few Christians, about 1.5% of world population. It means not more than 100,000 Catholics out of about 200,000 Catholics in all these countries.
Working with the local communities in unstable circumstances of the region, the Patriarchate has been facing numerous challenges.
It's very difficult for us to solve all the problems, economical problems, also in giving a perspective, professional perspective for the Christians. We try to have several projects, housing projects, job creation, to help the Christians. But of course, the main thing is to work on formation, education, in order to form the young generation of Christians to be motivated to remain there and see their presence there as mission.
In its present form, the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem was established with the Crusaders in 1099. Then Jerusalem was taken over by Saladin in 1187, and the Latin Patriarch moved temporarily to Acco in 1291. After the failure of the Crusades, the Church understood that the dialogue and the peaceful coexistence with Muslims was the right way to protect the holy places. Subsequently, the unarmed missionary apostolate replaced the army of Crusaders. However, tensions still exist to the present day.
Especially in Holy Land, Israel-Palestine, the relations among the different religions, the main three monotheistic religions, is affected by politics. The political situation, especially the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is affecting our relations. So at level of institutional level is very difficult. At the personal level, you can find a lot of cooperation, understanding, and sometimes also problems. And of course, problems that sometimes are normal because there are problems among neighbors, or sometimes also we can find the phenomenon of fundamentalism or extremism.
At the beginning of the 13th century, St. Francis of Assisi went on pilgrimage to the Middle East. During his journey, he met with the governor of the Holy Land, Sultan Melik al-Kamel. After that, the Franciscan friars minor became the custodians of the holy places in the Holy Land, and they remain so to this day. In fact, His Excellency himself served for 12 years as the Franciscan protector, or custos, of the Holy Land. Archbishop Pizzaballa says that to look after the Holy Land today means being in those places, giving them life with the liturgy and praying in them. The Latin Patriarchate is also working to prevent the negative effects of extremism.
It's very difficult to guard against this. What we can do is, first of all, to pray, to work with the Christian community, especially with the youth, to unite them as much as possible, education, but it's very difficult because we cannot, we don't have the energies to fight the social networks and the media, all what is talking in favor of fundamentalism and extremism in these countries.
Together with the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre, the whole Church is supporting the mission of protecting the Holy Land.
For us, it's essential. We are, as I said, a very small flock, a very small community. Without the international support, universal support of the universal churches, for us, it would be impossible to maintain the different institutions, schools, hospitals, all the different activities of the church. But also, we will feel abandoned. So the presence of universal churches we support and their presence in pilgrimages also is a big help.
The main role of the custos is to coordinate and welcome pilgrims who come to the Holy Land. So first as custos and now as head of the Patriarchate, Archbishop Pizzaballa continues to promote visits to the Holy Land.
Come to Jerusalem. I know that many are scared. They are afraid to come because they are afraid that we are in the midst of the war. The war is in Syria and Iraq, not in Holy Land. The pilgrimage to the Holy Land is safe, and your presence will help us not only to maintain the holy places and the Christian communities, but also to feel part of the universal church we are part of.
Thanks for watching. Stick around for more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano. The Apostolic Palace at Castel Gandolfo has served as the summer residence for the Roman pontiffs for 3 centuries. It's located 25 kilometers outside of Rome in the hills near Lake Albano. The pontifical villa comprises about 55 hectares, of which 30 make up the gardens and 25 are used for farming. It's 11 hectares bigger than the Vatican City. On the 22nd of October, Pope Francis decided to open to the public the private apartments of the Holy Father there. We caught up with the curator of the collections of the Vatican Museums, Sandro Barbagallo, to discover more about the event.
Today is a very special day. The inauguration of the opening to the public of the papal apartment in the Apostolic Palace of Castel Gandolfo. This opening is very special and symbolic because for the first time, thanks to the kindness of Pope Francis, everyone can see the places where the Pope lives, where the popes lived, where the popes have spent their holidays over the past 400 years.
The apartments are divided into 2 sectors. There's a public sector where the Pope usually receives guests and pilgrims, and the private sector, which includes the library, the bedroom, some halls, an office, and a chapel. Pope Francis has only visited this palace a couple of times since his election in 2013, but he's never spent the night here. Mr. Barbagallo says that there's nothing strange in the decision of the Pope not to use his summer residence.
The popes related to the history of Castel Gandolfo are only a few more than 30. And of these 33 popes, only 15 actually stayed in Castel Gandolfo, which means that 18 of them did not spend their holidays here, but preferred instead to remain down in Rome in the Apostolic Palace.
When and if the Pope ever wants to use the residence again, there's no need to do anything special, because nothing has been changed in the private apartments.
If the Pope wanted to come back, the only thing we need to do would be to remove the rope barriers which mark the visitor's path. and the apartment will be available again to be used by the Holy Father.
Disponibile all'uso del Santo Padre.
These apartments can tell the history of the papacy, and they once even saved the lives of local people. During the Nazi occupation of World War II, Pope Pius XII rescued here some Jewish people and civilians. Visitors can still see the holes in the walls of the villa. A bomb exploded very near to the palace.
Nel 1943 cominciarono.
A series of bombings started over this area in 1943, American bombing, and all the citizens of Castel Gandolfo, nearby Albano and the surrounding area, all civilians of course, ran to seek shelter right here in the Apostolic Palace and in the villas. Pius XII opened the doors of the palace, and the doors of the villas welcoming several hundreds of people. He even opened this, his private apartment, and in what was his private bedroom, some 40 children were born. These children will then be nicknamed the Pope's children.
Soprannominati figli del Papa.
The property of the Papal Palace includes, together with the apartments, the observatory and the Papal Portrait Gallery.
Venendo a visitare il Palazzo Apostolico.
When you come visit the Apostolic Palace, you can first see the Papal Portrait Gallery, which is on the first floor right below this one here where we are now. In the gallery are on display the portraits of popes of the last 500 years, starting from Julius II, who was elected in 1503, down to the reigning Pope Francis. It is a great chance to discover the history of the papacy of these last 500 years.
Poter scoprire la storia del papato di questi 500 anni.
Visiting the private apartments of the popes is a unique experience. Visitors can see the papal bedroom where John Paul II spent a convulsive night after the attack. They can take a look at a private study where so many pages of magisterium have been written, and can pray in the private chapel where popes have spoken with God. This place can shed some light on the history of the Catholic Church, and in particular, on the history of the papacy.